Low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope.
How would you define user experience?
I would say it's about, the word experience, it's pretty straightforward, like user experience. It should feel engaging and interactive and easy to navigate, and it kind of enhances the user's ability to like gather information or feel like they've, come across something cool, and it enhances their, experience with the brand or the messaging or whatever it is.
How would you two define user experience?
It's how the person feels on the other end. So it is the interface between the product and the consumer.
Yeah, and I would say how you feel as a person with a product or in a space, and how it reaffirms your values or is jarring to your sensibilities.
How would you define user experience?
To me, it's like sometimes I get on different platforms and I'm like, oh, this is so confusing for me. Like you want to check out you are on an online website and you want to buy a product, and then you want to go through a whole checkout process, and you're like, oh, I didn't see that. I didn't see this. So I feel like creating a experience where users don't feel lost through the whole process from A to Z, it's what I actually see like. That's how I define. I define a very clear path for a user to kind of know where the back button is. Sometimes you don't see a back button, but you see an X button, and then you're like, well, if I press the X button, am I completely go out of where I started, or am I everything gonna erase, or am I gonna go one step back? So I kind of come across a lot of situations like that, and I'm like, well, what's my next place? Do I have to press the continue button? Am I going to be done? Or are they going to charge me if I press the continue button? Or am I going to be asking more questions, Those are some of the stuff that I feel like I experience when it comes to a UI and when it comes to the user experience.
What would you think that user experience is?
I would say it's maybe looking into how users experience a website or experience a event, like a concert maybe.
How would you maybe define user experience?
Oh man, I have a hard time with this question because I think it is used in so many different ways today. But I guess in my practice of design, you want to think about a person feeling things and doing things over time, and so that can happen in a lot of different ways. It can happen with an interface, it can happen with an environment, it can happen with interaction with an organization. So regardless of what the medium is, I think user experience design or human experience design is about thinking about solving a problem from a person's point of view.
Just based on the words user experience, what would you think that is?
Something on the computer to connect to something.
What would you say user experience is?
I gotta say, I own an architecture firm. So user experience is a misnomer because design should take into account who the user is actually going to be. So by causing it user experience is calling into light the idea that there was a group of designers who didn't take into account users at one point.
Yeah.
And that's really more what it is. It's a reaction to the idea that there were a group of designers at one time who were doing things in a more top-down draconian kind of way.
What do you think a user experience designer does?
Probably tries to design something that makes the user feel happy.
What do you guys think a user experience designer does?
I would imagine it's somebody who designs how you get from A to Z, from your beginning of using an app to your final, you bought something online or you got what you wanted from the app.
My definition would be they're designing sort of the decision tree that you make as a user of an app, or it could be anything, could not necessarily an app, but they're deciding what's the best way to sort of send you through different screens and stuff and get the user to what they need, what they want.
What would you think a UX designer does?
I have no idea, Tater.
No worries.
What do you think a user experience designer does?
I guess from the perspective of somebody who you're using something, right? If you're a user, you're using something, and the journey that you go on in using whatever the thing is.
In terms of user experience, I've heard that word like as it applies to websites, so that's my frame of reference. So everything you're seeing whenever you interface with a website, like on their main page, or the images you're seeing, colors you're exposed to, the kind of like copywriting language and everything like that you first get to see. It gives you like the personality of a website or an entity.
What do you think a user experience designer does?
Yes, so I vaguely know it. I went to business school for undergrad and I work in marketing now. I believe user experience UX is like you wireframe, it's the back end of a website, or maybe I will correct that. It's more like actually the experience of the end recipient on a website or an app. That's more, friendly to actually like what they're going through and the buyer's experience and that in that realm.
What do you think a user experience researcher does?
I guess tests how effective that design is. So whether or not people understand what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to use a product.
What do you think a UX designer or a UX researcher would do?
So researching, I'm assuming people using certain products to give feedback to the company. I feel like that would be beneficial just to know, your users' interests and dislikes, and just to get feedback on where to go moving forward, probably. It might change the way that they move forward, or the way that they build their product.
What do you think a user experience researcher does?
Well, that's her background, so you...
Oh!
I think they're anthropologists almost. So, as Allie was saying, it's not just enough to look at the product. It's also culturally how it fits, and then it's also psychologically how it reaffirms sense of self and attachment.
Well, I think one of the things that I learned with raising children oftentimes is people are thinking about you and you're not thinking about them. And when you're experiencing something, people are feeling something. You just don't necessarily have it defined. And so as a company or an organization, if you can capture how to make that an enjoyable experience, it's going to go much farther than if it's difficult to access a product.
When you think of like what a user experience researcher would do, what would you say? What would you think that a UX researcher?
Oh, I love this. They should really find out. Like, this is something I don't think is done a lot in the design field, especially in architecture. But they should actually study how people use spaces and see what the use type really is going to look like. Like, in the sense of a kitchen, like what's efficient or what might cause the most joy, or you can get into like just efficiency or the tactile nature of how to make it an enjoyable place to work.
Hey, buddy. Hi.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have any thoughts on user experience?
So, like